Life in the military holds many things to be tough to understand from the outside world. The determination, grit, and energy exerted while in the military is unbelievable compared to the everyday lives of the average person. Eventually, that training and hard work pays off when war begins. Major Duane Stout saw his training pay off while flying Huey and Chinook helicopters supporting the Korean and American divisions in the Vietnam War. Stout was born in Lakeview, Michigan on October 16, 1942, where Arnold and Hilda, his parents, raised him on the farm. Stout attended Michigan State University, where he took ROTC for 3 years and passed with flying colors. Some of the courses there were canoeing, fly and bait casting, forestry, and swimming. Later, he took officer candidate school training after basic training in Fort Dix, New Jersey, and came out of there as a second lieutenant and the number one student out of 166 people. Then, having graduated from Michigan State University, Stout returned home and assisted his father on the family farm. He knew that the draft was coming up, and he would not have been in the Army if it were not for him deciding to enlist. When he arrived at his first base ever in the military, he received a letter from his wife. The letter informed Stout that his wife was pregnant, and he was going to be a father. If he would have waited to get drafted, Stout would not have been in the Army because he would have had a newborn baby. Stout later on down the road went to Northern Warfare Training Center in Alaska, where he was in charge of the high altitude rescue team. One time, one of his comrades, Seymour, fell through the snow and into a crevice in the ice. After another person went down to attempt to find Seymour, Stout volunteered himself to go down into the crevice and find his friend. After a little while of digging with a shovel, Stout heard a noise and yelled up to the men on top and asked if they said anything. Once they replied saying they did not say anything, Stout heard the noise again and walked towards it, and sure enough, there Seymour was. After this valiant act of bravery, Stout received the Soldier's Medal, which is the highest honor for peacetime valor. The first tour to Vietnam that Stout had taken, he was flying a Huey helicopter, whereas in Stout's second tour, he flew a Chinook helicopter. When Stout was flying the Huey helicopter in Vietnam, he was supporting the Korean division that was stationed in Vietnam with the 129th Assault Helicopter Company. In the second tour, Stout flew the Chinook helicopter to support the American division that was stationed in Vietnam, also with the 129th Assault Helicopter Company. In both tours, Stout was the operations officer, which meant he planned flights and missions as well as flying the helicopters. Stout climbed the ranks a bit between the two tours by becoming a major for his second tour when he was a captain for his first tour. Being in a supporting role for the war is exactly what Stout wanted to do. He did not want to be on the ground fighting and living with the people down there.
Would you have rather been down on the ground fighting or flying the helicopters and supporting?
I wanted to fly so I didn't have to be on the ground.
The odds of being shot down on the ground were way higher than the odds of being shot down out of the sky, but being shot down out of the sky was definitely not impossible.
Yeah, so I would support them all I could, but I didn't want to be down there living in the jungle with them.
Stout explains that the friendships which are made in the military last a lifetime. He is still in contact with most of his military buddies, whether that be over the phone, Christmas cards, or meeting in person when possible. Stout also explains how some of the Koreans became his friends during the service.
I had a good relationship with the Koreans, and that worked out quite well, but there was no contact after we left there with the Koreans, but so made some good friends in the service.
In their spare time, Stout and his fellow military buddies played softball, some soccer, but mostly softball. Stout actually spent 2 weeks in the hospital and was grounded from flying for 5 weeks because of a softball game.
The first game, I had a man on second base and 2 outs, and the batter popped up a ball, and I went over to grab it, and I was in the first base line when I caught it, and he ran into me full speed and broke the ribs, and they ended up in the hospital for 2 weeks. And I was grounded for 5 weeks. They wouldn't let me fly for 5 weeks till that healed up.
While Stout was stationed in Alaska, he would trap for animals in the snow with foothold traps. He would catch animals like marten, beaver, muskrats, and parts of wolves.
I had a hold of a couple of wolves, but both of them got the toe off one of them. But they were so strong they pulled their feet out.
Stout once had to investigate a helicopter crash where a crew died. The crash was not caused by getting shot down. The crash was caused by a tree that was around a corner, and when they attempted to swerve and miss it, they crashed into the bridge. When Stout arrived on scene, he had to pull a body out of the wreckage of the helicopter, which was very tough for him to do.
I found out they had been flying on that bridge from the other direction, coming out of one of the Korean base camps. And this time they were going back to that camp, and they went around underneath the bridge from the other direction. And on the far bank, there was this tree, and apparently he swerved to miss the tree, which they didn't have to do coming the other direction. And then the main rotor hit the underside of the bridge, balled it up. The one crewman got out, and the one of the pilots was killed. The other one was hurt real bad. They medevaced him right up to the hospital. It was tragic to have to pull a burned body out of a wreckage.
Stout earned many various medals and awards throughout his time in the service. These included the Soldier's Medal, National Defense Service Medal, Army Aviator Badge, Air Medal, Bronze Star Medal, 4 Overseas Bars, Overseas Service Ribbon, Army Commendation Medal, Army Service Ribbon, Air Assault Badge, Army Achievement Medal, Vietnam Service Medal, Vietnam Campaign Medal, Meritorious Service Medal, Senior Army Aviator Badge, Armed Forces Reserve Medal, Vietnam Cross of Gallantry, and a Marksman Badge for a .45 caliber pistol.
No, Donna read them off last night. I couldn't believe it. There was a lot of them in there.
Like most people that were in the service, Stout was a very happy man the day he got to leave the service. As one would suspect, returning to civilian life was very easy for Stout, but his hard work did not stop there. After returning home to his wife, they got right back to work on the farm for 10 years.
Most of them couldn't relate to the service, except the fellows that I was in college with.
This is obviously not surprising at all because of what Stout and his comrades were put through from training to actually being in the war and risking their lives to save others. Stout left the interview after reflecting back on his time in the service.
Well, war is hell.
Stout expresses that everyone should appreciate and support the work that the people in the military do because some people do not want to be there. He was referring back to the draft because we do not have a draft currently, so the odds of people being in the service and not wanting to be there are low, but not impossible. He then explains that the friendships made in the service last until one person passes away. He also exclaims that if he would not have been in the service, he may not have known some of the family that he knows today, and he is grateful for what he has, but wishes he would not be paralyzed. One could say that the adventures of Major Duane C. Stout have put him in the position that he is in today with the people who love, surround, and support him. To end this project, I would like to say thank you to Major Duane C. Stout for his time in the service.